Hi, this is a multi-part recorded lecture for the DP-DT Topic 4 Raw Materials to Final Productions, Topic 4.1, where we're looking at physical properties and mechanical properties of materials. So our essential ideas here are that the materials that we select for manufacturing products need to be based on their properties, and choosing the right material is a complex task with physical, aesthetic, mechanical, and appropriate properties to be considered. We also need to consider the environmental, moral, and ethical issues surrounding the choice of materials for the use of any product, surface, or system, and science has created some new smart materials that allow for more choices of manufacturing materials. And one of those choices is graphene. So this is kind of a cool video that shows a really interesting substance called graphene. Have a look at it. It's got some unique properties. Could, if it was scaled up, and something that we could use, solve a lot of problems. We're going to start by looking at different types of properties. So there are physical properties, mechanical properties, aesthetic properties, and smart materials. So those are the sort of four categories that we're going to group our properties of materials into. So let's start with physical properties. This is any property that is measurable that describes a state of a material, for example, the mass, the weight, the volume, or density. The properties tend to be characteristics of the materials that can be identified through non-destructive testing, although some, like hardness, you might do some damage to the surface of something to test its hardness, so there might be some deformation involved with that, or scratching, that kind of thing. The first physical property that we need to consider is mass, and mass relates to the amount of matter that's contained within a specific material. It is often confused with weight, and we need to be careful of this, understandably, as we use kilograms to measure it. And we also use kilograms to measure weight. But mass is constant, whereas weight will vary depending on where it's measured. So you guys taking science in high school would know that 5 kilogram mass on Earth is the same as a 5 kilogram mass on the moon, but the weight would be different because the weight is how much gravity is pulling down on that mass. So the weight of something on Earth will be more than the weight of something on the moon. Weight relies on mass and gravitational forces to provide measurable value. Weight is technically measured as a force, which is the Newton. The mass of 1 kilogram is equivalent to about 10 newtons, 9.8 newtons on Earth. And of course, this would be less on the moon. One useful way to think of a Newton is to think of the mass of an apple, which is about 100 grams. And a Newton is the amount of force that it would take to move that apple 1 meter on Earth. Volume is a quantity of three-dimensional space enclosed by a boundary. So, for example, the space that a solid, liquid, or gas or shape occupies or contains. It can be a sphere, a cube, a cylinder, a rectangular prism, or an amorphous shape, but you're going to have certain volumes to that. And volumes are typically measured in cubic centimeters or milliliters or liters. Density is mass per unit volume of a material. Its importance is in the portability in terms of the product's weight and size. Design contexts include prepackaged food, like instant noodles, which are sold by weight and volume, and things like packaging foam, which has a high volume but low weight. Another physical property is electrical resistivity, the measure of a material's ability to conduct electricity. A material with low resistivity will conduct electricity well, and of course, one that has a high resistivity is not going to conduct things well. So we group those into conductors and insulators, and we'll talk about those in a second. So electrical insulators reduce the transmission of an electrical charge, and electrical conductors allow the transmission of an electrical charge. This picture that you're looking at here shows both of those. So the copper wire inside this cord right here is a conductor, and the plastic sheathing around the outside of the copper wire would be the insulator. We can also think of thermal conductivity. So this is a measure of how fast heat is conducted through a slab of material with a temperature difference across the slab. These are typical for showing thermal conductivity. You heat one end and then measure how long it takes to heat up or melt something like wax closer to the handle. Thermal expansion, it's a measure of the degree in increase in dimension when an object is heated. So we should know that as objects are heated, they expand because the atoms and molecules within them are moving faster and take up more space. This can be measured by the increase in length and area or volume. The expansion can be measured as a fractional increase in dimension per Kelvin increase in temperature. So what we're saying is how much has this increased in length, area, and volume per Kelvin increase in temperature. And 1 degree Kelvin is the same incremental increase as 1 degree Celsius, but Kelvin starts at a different 0 point. Celsius starts at 0 degrees Celsius, which is the freezing point of water. Kelvin starts at absolute zero, which is where there's no molecular motion. Hardness is another physical property we need to consider. This is the resistance a material offers to penetration or scratching. So how easy is it to scratch? And of course, something like a diamond is the most resistant to scratching. And these are just Mohs hardness scales for different minerals. So talc is the easiest to scratch. Diamond is the hardest to scratch. You can see that a fingernail would be about 2.5. It'll scratch gypsum and talc, but it won't scratch calcite. A copper penny will scratch calcite, but not fluorite. A knife will scratch apatite, but it won't scratch orthoclase. So these are useful to have an idea of how hard something is compared to different minerals. Another physical property is to figure out how chemically inert something is. So this is the lack of reactivity with other materials. Glass is famously chemically inert, so it's a good choice when you don't want to have any sort of substances leaking in from the glass itself or from the container. Plastic is not necessarily as chemically inert, so substances can leak out. For example, plastics are hardened with a chemical called BPA, and often that chemical will leach into the liquids that are inside that plastic bottle. Another physical property is being non-toxic. So this is the absence of toxic breakdown products or lack of reactivity. Be careful. I put this in here on purpose. You notice here it says 100% natural. That's great, but you have to understand that just because something is natural does not mean that it's not toxic. So for instance, if you think about some of the most poisonous and deadly things on the planet are produced by natural organisms. There's snakes, there's spiders, there's jellyfish, there are other animals and plants which have nasty toxins in them usually to reduce predation of them, but they're 100% natural. So just be careful when you see this. Non-toxic does not necessarily mean that it's 100% natural. It means that there's an absence of toxic breakdown products and lack of reactivity. You can also have something that's resistant to oxidation. So oxidation resistance is a property of a metal that means that it does not readily react with oxygen and degrade. So for instance, you might have a stainless steel bolt compared to a steel bolt. So a stainless steel bolt will be resistant to oxidation and won't oxidize as easily as a steel bolt. And you can see this is rust and oxidation here. This is a rust-free or oxidation-free bolt. There are also mechanical properties that we need to consider. Mechanical properties of a material involve the relationship between stress and strain or a reaction to an applied force. And there's plenty of them. You can see there's lots that we're going to go through. There's tensile strength, compression strength, etc., etc. So let's go through them. Tensile strength. This is the ability of a material to withstand a pulling force. One of the most important considerations when we consider tensile strength is, can a material resist a force without breaking when you pull on it? So it's a pulling force, and we're trying to see, is this something that we can resist without breaking? Compressional strength is the ability of a material to withstand being pushed or squashed. This is often important when you're using structural supports, so in houses and things like that, where you're holding a load, you would want compressional strength to be high. We have to think about twisting forces. So this is a distortion in which the two ends of a material do not lie in the same plane, and you're twisting them. You can see here this is a torsional stress where I'm turning this rod this way, and you want to be able to resist those things. Stress itself is a force on a material divided by the cross-sectional area of that material. And you can see here that we're looking at this cross section right here, which is this A sub 0 right here. And you can see that there's a force being applied this way, and we're looking at the force divided by this area right here. Strain is a response of a material due to stress. So these two things are connected, right? Strain and stress are connected. It's defined as the change in the length divided by the original length. So this is easy to imagine with tension. If I pull this way and this way, I want to measure what is the difference in the length of this object divided by the original cross-sectional area. Okay, so I'm measuring the force applied divided by the original cross-sectional area. Brings me to stiffness. So stiffness is the resistance of an elastic body to deflection. Stiffness is basically how hard is it to change a body's shape with an applied force. So something that is quite stiff, like a rod of wood or something like that, compared to something that is less stiff, like an elastic band or something like that. There's plasticity. Plasticity is the ability of a material to be changed in shape permanently. I'm going to talk about elasticity versus plasticity. This is plastic. It can be changed permanently. This is elastic because it will return to its original shape. Now, of course, you can stretch a rubber band so that it won't return to its original shape, and we'll talk about what that means. These can be returned to their original shape if you don't pull them too much. So there's a point where something stays elastic but then becomes plastic. Elasticity is the extent to which a material will return to its original shape after being deformed. And we're going to talk about these graphs right here. These are called stress and strain graphs. One last mechanical property before we get to stress and strain graphs is creep. So this is the slow, permanent deformation of a solid material under the influence of mechanical stress. One of the ways that I remember this is, this is rock, solid rock, but over time, the mechanical stress of plate tectonics and the earth moving around has folded these permanently so that they are deformed. You can see this in a bridge also. This beam that you can see right here has been deformed by a load over a long period of time. And of course, it's slow. All right, let's talk about stress and strain graphs. So you can see that on this axis right here, the y-axis, we have stress, and this is represented by the Greek letter sigma, and it is a pressure put on the material. It's measured in newtons per meter squared, or pascals, which is really pressure, often measured in megapascals, which are 1,000,000 pascals, or gigapascals, which are 1,000,000,000 pascals. So that's this axis right here. That's what you're measuring on that axis. For strain, what we're doing is measuring delta length divided by original length. Delta length will be the change in the length after stress is applied divided by the original length here, and that's what's going to give us the strain. The proportional limit is the point on the stress and strain curve where the linear elastic deformation region transitions into nonlinear plastic deformation region. So you'll see that this is a linear line. This is a line, right? And then it starts to become a curve. So the proportional limit is where this happens. Where does this line turn into a curve? And really what we're saying here is at this point, it's going to start changing from elastic to plastic deformation. And remember, the difference is elastic will return to its original shape. Plastic will not. It's going to permanently stay in that new shape. The yield point is the stress beyond which a material becomes plastic. So at the yield point, this product or whatever material it is going to become plastic. It is no longer elastic. The ultimate strength is the maximum stress a material can withstand. So this is where just before it actually breaks. This area right here is considered to be elastic deformation, this green area. This area here is our plastic deformation, right? It's curved. This is Young's modulus. You need to know it. Young's modulus is a measure of the stiffness of the elastic material defined by stress and strain. And really, it's the equation of this line right here. And what it means generally is that something that has a less steep line, so a line that would come out this way, would be more elastic, and something that has a steeper slope, like out this way, would be more stiff. Here's some examples of that. If I have a brittle polymer, this is quite stiff, right? And we have to go back to the definition of what stiffness is. Stiffness is the resistance of an elastic body to deflection by an applied force. So this polymer right here is going to be more difficult to deflect by force. This elastomer is going to be quite easy, right? It's got a lot of elasticity, and this plastic is going to be sort of in the middle right here. Here's an actual example of that. So if we look at steel versus aluminum, you can see that steel has quite a steep line, so that it's going to be quite stiff, and then it's going to get to a point where it is now plastic. So it's plastic at this point. It doesn't have that much elasticity. Aluminum, it takes less stress in order for it to become plastic. Another mechanical property is ductility. This is the ability of a material to be drawn or extruded into a wire or another extended shape. This is a video you should watch. It shows the process of making copper wiring. It's pretty interesting. Toughness is the ability of a material to resist the propagation of cracks. So this is not a tough thing. This is a glass. Actually, it's a Roman glass from 2,000 years ago, and this is a hammer. So this will propagate cracks really easily. It is not tough. It's brittle. This is quite tough. It's going to have it's very hard to propagate a crack in a hammer. So it's quite tough. This is harder. The glass here is harder than the hammer, but the hammer is tougher. So we have to be careful about thinking about toughness versus hardness. Diamonds are hard, but not necessarily tough. They can shatter and be quite brittle. Quite often things can be hard, but brittle, and that generally goes together, whereas they can be tough, but more soft. Okay, and you can see these material selection charts are something that we're going to look at a little while later. That brings me to brittle. So brittle is something that will break into numerous sharp shards like this glass right here, but not like this hammer. So brittleness and toughness are sort of like opposites of each other. This brings me to this material selection chart. A material selection chart is the chart that is used to identify the appropriate materials based on the desired properties. So let's learn how to read a material selection chart. Let's use this one right here. When I look at this, I'm going to start by looking at the Y and X axes. So to start, I can see on the Y axis, I'm looking at strength, and this is measured in megapascals. And so we can see that we have weak down here and strong up here. And down here, we're looking at brittle. This is toughness. So we're looking at brittle versus tough. And what you're doing is you're basically looking at which is higher on either of these axes. But the problem is that these are measured in a logarithmic scale, not in a linear scale. So you have to kind of pay attention to that as you're reading these. So for instance, this is 1,000 here, this is 10,000 here, this is 2,000 and 3,000 and 4,000 and 5,000. You'll notice that the distance or the interval between the points on this line right here are not even. So this is showing us that this is a logarithmic scale. So if I'm answering this question, which of the following materials has a strength of 1,000 megapascals and a toughness of 60 kilojoules per square meter, what I would be doing is saying, okay, I'm looking for 1,000 megapascals, so that's here. So it's something along this line right here. And then I'm looking for 60 kilojoules per square meter. So I would be looking between 10 and 100, and this would be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So when I look up here, it's either going to be metals and alloys or composites. Those are the only two that cross right here at the 60 kilojoules per meter squared and 1,000 megapascals. There are lots more charts for these here, and it's a great way to justify your choice of materials when you're doing Criterion C. All right, thank you for watching.